down by the political class? Then you're looking for Sanity Check Saturday mornings on 94.3 FM, The Talker.
So wake me up when it's all over. When I'm wiser and I'm older.
When I'm wiser and older.
Well, I'm older. You know, I heard a great phrase not too long ago, folks, and it went something like this. Knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens.
Ooh.
Just think about that.
Well, wake me up. And we got Marc Scaringi. Marc Scaringi, good morning, and thanks for joining Sanity Check. Hopefully you can wake us up. Give us your wisdom you on the NSA and everything else for that matter.
Well, good morning, Lou, and it's great to be on your program again.
Thank you.
And recently I joined Senator Rand Paul's class action lawsuit to shut down the NSA's domestic surveillance operation.
Nice.
And thanks to the heroic work of Edward Snowden, now the American people are fully aware of what our government has been doing, that it's been searching our Internet records, our phone records, emails, Facebooks, Skypes, illegally and unconstitutionally. And it's a gross violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. And I was very pleased with Judge Leon's decision in the federal district court, where he held that it is probably a violation of the Fourth Amendment and probably unconstitutional what the government is doing. It's just a preliminary injunction, but I'm hoping that it becomes a permanent injunction against what our government is doing to our own people.
You know, I listened to your interview with David Madeira, who is heard here on 6 to 9, 94.3 FM, The Talker, Monday through Friday. And one of the questions that he asked you, and I think this is very relevant, is what can we do? I mean, how do we change these things? And you had said, you know, we have to really look at our candidates and who is standing up for the Constitution but what can we do? What can we do have on the local level here and certainly in our communities? How do we stand up to this behemoth of a government at this point in time to say we've had enough? Besides maybe doing like Rand Paul and bringing attention to these things?
Well, Rand Paul has initiated a lawsuit against the government. Larry Klayman, who filed the first suit after the revelations by Edward Snowden, is an attorney and a private citizen who brought a suit on behalf of himself and others. So we can seek redress in the courts for our grievances against the government's unconstitutional actions. And we can also support candidates for federal, state, and local office who understand the importance of protecting our constitutional rights and defending those rights against the actions and conduct of the government.
You're listening to Marc Scaringi, a former candidate for United States Senate here in Pennsylvania. I first heard you at a Campaign for Liberty meeting, Mark, and some of the subjects that you brought up shouldn't have floored me, but it did, only in the sense that it was one of the first times I actually heard a candidate address some of these things that you're talking about now, and it was very refreshing. Our lines are completely lit up, and there are people that have just texted me that want to get in on the conversation about the NSA. Let me just take one or two, and certainly you have such insight into this area of the NSA. Maybe you could help answer some of the questions. Let's take John Manco on line 2. John, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, Michael, I didn't make it down to see you this morning.
No problem. We'll hook up somewhere.
Yeah, I want to get real quick on this conversation, and then I'll listen offline. But, you know, where's the Governors Association up in arms on protecting the sovereignty of their states and the rights of their citizens? You know, if you look at since this NSA and Snowden stuff has hit the airwaves, I haven't found one position or one article talking about Corbett's position on the NSA and how it affects the sovereignty of Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvanians. You know, you go back, you're looking at his Twitter feed all the way back to August of last year, you'll see everything about doggy contests and baseball. But, we're not paying him to be a baseball fan, and he has no position whatsoever on these national issues that are currently taking place. So you want to talk about, elected officials, governor's race coming up, so if you want a government that has complete apathy, you go ahead and elect Corbett once again. But, if you want a state government that will stand up for your rights, we need to start looking at other candidates that are running.
Thank you, John. Mark, what is are you aware of what our current governor's position is, and what should we be doing as a citizenry to maybe bring more awareness to this issue, maybe to the governor's race?
Well, I don't know if Governor Corbett has taken a position on the NSA spying operation, but the caller raises a great question, and here's an example. I've been working with Senator Mike Fulmer, who's a strong
great guy,
constitutional conservative from Lebanon County, and Senator Fulmer has introduced a bill, Senate Bill 999, the Liberty Preservation Act. And that is a bill in the General Assembly of Pennsylvania that would essentially declare that Pennsylvania will not comply with any effort by the federal government to carry out these indefinite detentions of U.S. citizens and others for suspected violations of the National Defense Authorization Act or the Authorization of Use of Military Force Act. So this is that issue where the federal government has taken the position that it can indefinitely detain even U.S. citizens and hold them without charge, without trial, without probable cause that they have committed a crime. And so we have an elected leader in State Senator Mike Fulmer who is standing up and he's saying, oh, no, not in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is not going to assist the federal government in carrying out this law that we in Pennsylvania believe to be unconstitutional. So there's great evidence of an elected official standing up against the federal government's unconstitutional overreach.
How is that? Do you have any idea of how that's making its way through the state Senate, the Liberty Preservation Act? Is there walls being put up for it? Because it in my mind, Mark, you would think that it's something that we should all be able to get behind. It seems logical, but unfortunately, logic doesn't always prevail.
Well, we have met with some opposition among some statewide law enforcement associations who have criticized a part of the bill that criminalizes the action by a state officer or agent or employee or a local state or local official law enforcement agent for providing assistance to the federal government in carrying out an indefinite detention. So the fact that our bill has criminalized this action by a state or a local officer has resulted in some opposition. But we are working with the statewide law enforcement associations involved and others in trying to resolve those differences of opinion as to which is the best way to proceed. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to work something out and still have a good, solid, strong bill that declares that Pennsylvania will not cooperate. It will not permit any of its employees or agents to cooperate with the federal government in these indefinite detentions.
Mark, all our lines are lit up, and there's a number of folks that would like to get in. Certainly, X, who's on the station as a regular. Would you mind taking some more calls? And do you have the time to even stay through the next segment and answer some of these questions? Because I think it's important, and we've certainly touched on the nerve, and we'd like to hear a little bit more insight on what you think about this.
Sure, I have the time.
Good.
Awesome.
Let's take Frank on line 2. Good morning, Frank.
Morning, Mark. Morning, Lou. This is incrementalism, but you're talking about Pennsylvania state agents and perhaps employees. What happens with the National Guard? Where do they fall? Because they're the guys that have the armaments. If what I'm reading correctly, they may even be the people that are buying these rounds of ammunition. So what threat are they going to pose if they do not realize that they are part of us, the Pennsylvania citizenry?
Great question, Mark. What do you think?
Well, that's an issue that's going to have to be worked out as we continue to deliberate over this bill and try to get the best bill that we can that protects Pennsylvanians in the best way possible. So that will be something that we'll consider and work through.
Frank, thanks for that.
Great question.
Thanks for that question. X, do you want to join in, or you want to join in right after the break here?
After the break.
After the break, and we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be with Marc Scaringi, former United States Senate candidate for the Republican Party, and talking about the NSA, and we do want to talk a little bit about jury nullification. We'll be back in a moment.
Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Listen to the word I say. The screams all sound the same.
Don't listen to a word I say, Michael. How about you?
No. Well, I think I've been listening for too long, Lou.
94.3 FM, The
Talker.
Talker.
I think like a libertarian, I think.
This is Sanity Check, 888-577-4487, 888-577-4487. We have X on the line, and we have Marc Scaringi on the line talking NSA, and we appreciate you coming on today, Mark. X, what kind of questions you have for Mr. Scaringi?
Well, I guess the main thing that we want to get from it is just the fact that, Mark, we are, as the public, are not hearing anything about the fact that this could have easily been decided by just going to the courts and following the proper procedures by getting a warrant for these intrusions. This is just the overstep of what we're looking at here, that, most of these abuses, most Americans don't have a problem if you go through the courts, but we've gotten to the point where the courts only apply to the public. They don't apply when you're dealing with the government.
Well, I think X, and I love that name, X, raises a very good point. Interestingly, the FISA courts the government has presented warrants to the FISA court to request that the court authorize these searches, and the court has authorized these searches. The warrants, however, in my view, and I believe in the view of Federal Judge Leon, do not rise to the level of warrants that would satisfy our Fourth Amendment. In other words, what the government is using, what the NSA attorneys are using, are general warrants that are not specific to the person, place, or thing to be searched. They're not particular to the items to be searched. And, of course, there is no probable cause at all asserted in these general warrants. And that's why they are blatantly unconstitutional. One of the main motivating factors behind our war for independence from Great Britain were the use of these general warrants or general writs of assistance by the king and the king's soldiers, going in and searching, writing their own warrants without probable cause, and searching the homes and businesses and warehouses of Boston merchants. And that led James Otis and John Adams, two of our greatest founding fathers, to take action against the king in courts in Boston. And James Otis had one of the most significant cases. Of course, he lost. It's hard to beat the king in the king's court. But John Adams later went on to state that it was these general writs of assistance that were the linchpin in giving the colonists of Massachusetts grounds to resist and begin to fight against these intrusions into the privacy and security of these English colonists. And John Adams wrote glowingly about the work of James Otis in fighting against these government intrusions through these general warrants, and that's why I'm so pleased to assist in any way that I can Senator Rand Paul in his lawsuit against the National Security Agency, which is essentially doing the same thing. It's as if we've come full circle.
And for our history buffs, that's one of the reasons why we have the Fourth Amendment. And certainly what you're talking about, Mark, is the intolerable acts, and specifically maybe more so the Stamp Act. And that was one of the reasons why they were adamant about putting in the Fourth Amendment.
That's exactly right.
I would think one interjection here is just the fact that they cannot cite any terrorist thing that's been broken up because of what they're doing. I mean, that is the most important part. The surveillance state they put in place has not led to any terrorist thing being stopped.
That's exactly
so it just
right.
Goes to show you that it's completely ineffective.
That was noted by Judge Leon in his decision, where he gave the government plenty of opportunities to present evidence in support of its contention that this spying operation is necessary in the interests of national security. And Judge Leon was asking for proof, and the government was unable to present one case in which this massive domestic spying operation led to the interdiction of one terrorist attack.
Mark, change subjects here just a touch, and we're running out of time already. But one of those subjects that you spoke of at the Campaign for Liberty was about jury nullification, and quite honestly, you were the first person. We knew about jury nullification. You were the first person that had ever came before that group, that body that I remember, that actually talked about jury nullification, understood the importance of jury nullification, and why we have gotten to the point where we're at today. Certainly, that could be one of the vanguards, or something that we could, as citizens, look at if more people knew about it, more judges knew about it. I think you even mentioned that it's not really even taught about in law schools anymore. So, just briefly, why is jury nullification important? Why is it something that we should have part of the conversation? Because sometimes I think we bring these subjects up and people say, "Oh, insanity check again." There we go again. But these are this to us is a very important issue. Maybe you could just speak to that for a moment or two.
Well, the right to a jury trial is a long-held and cherished right. And the purpose of the jury trial is to afford the individual being tried a protection from the tyranny of the government and the tyranny of its law and the manner in which the law is being applied in that case. The jury is not the handmaiden of the prosecution or the judge. The jury is a great bulwark and a great protector of the individual accused. And I think too often we don't understand what the purpose of the jury trial is. But that's what it is. Our founding fathers taught us of the importance of a trial by jury, and that it is the check against arbitrary methods of prosecuting pretended offenses. It's the check against engines of judicial despotism, according to Alexander Hamilton. It was a long-held right. It's enshrined in our Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution. And juries have long held the power to nullify. And this is commonly misunderstood or not understood in the modern times. But we've had a long and proud history of jury nullification in our country, in England, in Pennsylvania, where we've had Pennsylvania Supreme Court decisions noting the power of the jury to be the judge of the law in criminal cases, being one of the most valuable securities guaranteed by the Bill of Rights. We have a history of juries in northern states nullifying the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, for example, by refusing to convict individuals who had assisted runaway slaves that have been captured in free states.
Mark, we're running out of time, but at the last question, as a defense attorney in Pennsylvania, if you were to argue jury nullification today in the courts, what would happen?
Well, I think you might get into a little bit of trouble. And that is part of the problem. The federal courts are unanimous in holding that judges may not instruct the jury on its power to nullify. There is this understanding in the judiciary that there is a power to nullify, but it's to be kind of kept hush-hush.
There you go.
And the judge is not permitted to instruct on it, and the attorney is not permitted to argue it or to notify the jury of it. And this is where we need public advocates to help us change the way our court system works, to allow attorneys and to allow pro se litigants to inform the jury of its power to nullify laws that are unjust and the application of laws in unjust situations.
Bingo. Mark, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. You know you're always welcome to come on our show, and we certainly appreciate it. Michael?
Hey, you know what? Power to the people, and God bless.
Power to the people, and we'll just keep, what we need to do is keep enlightening.
Absolutely.
Have a great weekend, folks. God bless.